Welcome, the Lord's chosen. When you finally stop caring, the world starts panicking. There's something sacred about indifference. Not the cold, lifeless kind, but the type that comes after surviving every storm meant to break you. It's not apathy, it's arrival. You've reached that eerie silence after chaos, where revenge looks childish and gossip sounds like static. The moment you stopped explaining yourself, defending yourself, or proving your worth, you became untraceable in their emotional radar. Here's the truth most people can't digest. The chosen ones don't win through payback. They win through peace. You're not silent because you're weak. You're quiet because you've realized noise is cheap and your energy is not a public resource. The same people who plotted your embarrassment are now confused why you're unbothered. They expected you to swing back. Instead, you stepped over their gossip like someone sidestepping spilled juice in a hallway, mildly grossed out but never offended. Psychologically speaking, detachment is the highest form of dominance. Studies even show that when someone refuses to emotionally engage, it dismantles the manipulator's control mechanism. Because manipulation only works if you care. So when you stop caring, they lose their remote access to your peace. You're not ignoring them. You're ascending past them. You're no longer available for petty frequency transmissions. You've realized that revenge feeds the cycle, but indifference ends it. And nothing terrifies small minds more than someone who has outgrown the need to respond. Because at this point, you're not avoiding drama. You've become allergic to it. Number one, you outgrew their battlefield, and that's something most people will never understand. There comes a point when you realize not every conflict deserves your participation. Some people aren't trying to solve anything. They're just trying to keep you stuck at the level where they still have access to you. You stopped swinging, not because you ran out of strength, but because you finally recognized how small the arena really was. Fighting back started to feel like arguing with a storm, loud, pointless, and beneath your new capacity for peace. Growth changes your reflexes. What used to trigger you now barely registers. You see the same patterns replaying: gossip, envy, backhanded remarks. And instead of reacting, you just feel distance. That's not weakness. That's evolution. When you outgrow the battlefield, even victory feels boring, because you understand the entire setup was designed to drain your focus, not define your worth. Their drama used to feel personal. Now it looks like noise made by people who haven't learned self-control. It's strange at first, realizing that silence is more powerful than retaliation. The old version of you wanted justice, explanations, maybe even revenge. But the wiser version knows that life has a funny way of balancing things without your involvement. You start to see how peace punishes louder than payback ever could. The people who tried to provoke you eventually look ridiculous, like someone shadowboxing an opponent who left the ring. They're still swinging. You've already gone home. The moment you stop trying to prove yourself, you strip them of their influence. That's what true power looks like, not in how loud you are, but in how little their chaos can reach you. They gossip because they want to stay relevant in your story. You step over it because you're too busy writing the next chapter. They wanted reaction. You gave them absence. And absence speaks in a language their insecurity can't translate. You didn't surrender. You ascended. You left the field, not because you were defeated, but because you realized the war was never worthy of your energy in the first place. That's when you truly win, when peace becomes your loudest victory. Number two, indifference isn't weakness. It's spiritual warfare in silence. When you stop caring about what was designed to offend you, you strip the enemy of their only weapon, your reaction. People who feed on chaos can't survive without attention. The moment you withdraw it, you starve them. That's why indifference feels so threatening. It exposes who's addicted to your energy. It's not that you don't feel anything. It's that you finally learned how to master what you feel instead of being mastered by it. There's a kind of authority that comes from restraint. Anyone can lash out, argue, defend, or retaliate. That's predictable. But it takes real power to say, "You no longer affect me," and actually mean it. The strength in indifference is invisible to those who crave validation. It's the quiet confidence that says, "I no longer dance to the sound of your provocation." You've reclaimed the power that gossip, betrayal, and manipulation once held over you. People don't realize how much control they lose when they care too much about what others say. Every insult hooks into your attention and drains a little bit of peace. But when you learn to stay still in the middle of noise, something miraculous happens. Your energy resets. You stop bleeding emotion into dead conversations. You stop volunteering your spirit to small minds. That's not avoidance. That's discipline. You're not ignoring the storm. You're refusing to let it register in your weather system. The universe responds differently when you choose indifference from a place of awareness. It's not cold-heartedness. It's clarity. You begin to see that revenge and reaction are just different shades of dependence. They both require you to stay emotionally tethered to the person who wronged you, but indifference cuts the cord completely. It's saying, "You no longer exist in my emotional universe." And that's the most effective retaliation there is. Disappearance from their reach. People will test your peace, and when they realize they can't move you, they'll start moving themselves out of your way. That's when indifference turns into protection. It doesn't just guard your energy, it multiplies it. Because once you stop feeding what drains you, you start nourishing what builds you. That's not detachment, that's self-mastery disguised as silence. Number 3, gossip is a currency you no longer accept. It only circulates where attention is cheap and truth is optional. When you stop engaging with it, the whole system collapses. Gossip needs listeners the same way fire needs oxygen. The moment you refuse to feed it, it dies. And so does the illusion of control it once had over you. The people who talk behind your back aren't discussing truth. They're trading distortions to feel relevant. But the chosen ones know that staying silent isn't submission. It's strategy. You let them talk because you understand that the louder they get, the more invisible they become to what actually matters. The funny part is, gossip always tells you more about the speaker than the subject. Every rumor carries the scent of the insecurity that birthed it. You start noticing patterns. People who can't build tend to talk about those who can. It's never about you. It's about their need to stay significant in a life that feels smaller when compared to yours. That's why you stopped reacting. Not because you're above it, but because you finally recognize the spiritual poverty behind it. The real shift happens when you no longer feel the urge to defend yourself. You realize that the truth doesn't need a PR team. People who really know you don't need proof. And those who believe lies wouldn't believe facts anyway. So you stop trying to convince anyone, and in that stillness, you recover your power. That's the moment gossip loses its profit margin. There's nothing left to sell when you stop buying into it. What most don't realize is that gossip is emotional blackmail disguised as curiosity. It tries to pull you into the mud by forcing you to care. But when you remain composed and when you keep creating, keep growing, keep existing peacefully, you become unreachable. Every rumor starts to sound like static against the signal of your progress. Your name may live in their mouths, but your essence lives beyond their understanding. That's the beauty of outgrowing gossip. You become too real to be defined by whispers. Your silence becomes its own headline. You stop existing in their conversations and start existing in your purpose. And that's a story no rumor can rewrite. Number 4, you're not ignoring them. You're invalidating their existence in your reality. There's a difference between silence and deletion. Ignoring means you still acknowledge their presence. Deletion means you've erased their significance altogether. That's the level the Chosen One operates on. When someone can no longer affect your mood, distract your focus, or shift your peace, they cease to exist in your energetic world. They may still talk, still plot, still crave a reaction. But spiritually, they've been evicted. You've revoked their emotional passport. Most people confuse reaction with relevance. They believe if they can provoke you, they still matter. That's why drama always tries to lure you into response. It feeds on acknowledgement. But when you refuse to engage, you don't just reject the bait. You dismantle the illusion that they ever had a role in your destiny. You're not pretending not to see them. You've simply stopped seeing them as factors. That's why they feel it like exile. You didn't just go quiet. You went beyond reach. This kind of detachment isn't arrogance, it's sovereignty. You realized your peace is sacred territory, and not everyone deserves visitation rights. So you pulled your energy back like a kingdom closing its gates. No announcements, no explanations, no emotional press release, just silence, the kind that speaks of freedom and authority. And when people notice that your energy no longer bends toward their existence, they panic. Because in your world, to lose access is to lose identity. The power in invalidation is subtle but absolute. You're not punishing anyone. You're simply refusing to carry dead weight into new dimensions of yourself. You don't block them out of hatred. You simply stop orbiting where gravity doesn't serve you. You begin to see that not everything that reaches for you deserves response. And that realization turns you untouchable. When you erase drama from your timeline, peace starts editing your story. The silence isn't emptiness. It's divine filtration. You've learned that every interaction is an investment, and not everyone qualifies for your attention. You stopped giving discounts on your energy. That's not ego. That's evolution. Because when you stop validating what's beneath your purpose, the universe starts amplifying what's aligned with it. Number 5, your evolution turned their mockery into free marketing. What they meant to use against you became your greatest advertisement. Every time they laughed at you, gossiped about you, or twisted your story, they unknowingly expanded your reach. You didn't have to defend yourself. They did your publicity for you. That's the hidden genius of divine strategy. The universe converts noise into exposure. What was meant to humiliate you ends up highlighting you. They never understood that mockery only works when you stay small. But you grew. You kept working, kept rising, kept evolving. And while they were busy talking, your consistency made their words obsolete. Their ridicule became the trailer for your transformation. Every insult carried your name into rooms you hadn't entered yet. That's how destiny operates. It lets your enemies spread the message you don't have time to deliver. You see, when people gossip about you, they unknowingly create curiosity. Someone hears your name in their negativity and decides to see for themselves. And what they find is someone nothing like the rumors. That discovery shifts the narrative in your favor. Your authenticity does the cleanup. They talk, others observe, and truth ends up doing the heavy lifting. The same mouths that tried to stain your reputation end up giving it reach. You stopped taking offense because you realized what was happening behind the scenes. The universe was turning defamation into distribution. Their obsession was your exposure. They gave you free airtime, free attention, and free proof of endurance. Every time they brought you up, you occupied space in their audience's awareness. They became unpaid ambassadors of your resilience. The higher you evolved, the more ridiculous their bitterness appeared. People began to notice the contrast, your calm versus their chaos, your progress versus their fixation. That's when perception flipped. What began as mockery became evidence of your significance. They can't stop talking about what doesn't matter, and that's the secret. You mattered far more than they were ready to admit. That's why you never had to clap back. You let the noise advertise your peace. You let your growth make their gossip look outdated. And now, without trying, you've turned their whispers into waves. And those waves are carrying your name farther than your voice ever could. Number 6. You don't seek revenge because you already survived what was sent to destroy you. There's a power that comes with surviving what was meant to break you, a quiet, almost untouchable kind of strength. When you face storms that were supposed to end you and you're still standing, revenge becomes unnecessary. The fact that you're breathing, growing, and glowing is already the ultimate rebuttal. You don't need to get even with anyone when life itself has already tilted the scale in your favor. Revenge is for those still trying to prove they matter. But once you've seen how close you came to losing yourself and how grace still carried you through, you realize there's nothing left to prove. The same people who tried to destroy your name are now watching you live a peace they can't manufacture. That's a higher form of justice. You're no longer chasing payback because you understand that survival is its own reward. They wanted you broken, bitter, and invisible. Instead, you became wiser, softer, and louder in presence. That reversal is divine irony, and you didn't have to lift a finger for it. Revenge ties you to the same pain you escaped. It keeps you looping inside the story you've already outgrown. When you move on, you reclaim authorship. Your focus shifts from what they did to what you're building. You stop revisiting wounds just to prove you're healed. That's when you realize the true win is peace, not punishment. Because while they're still rehearsing the past, you're writing your future. People rarely notice how much strength it takes to walk away without retaliation. It's not weakness, it's self-respect. You understand that the universe handles balance far better than you ever could. So instead of plotting, you plant. Instead of getting even, you elevate. And eventually the contrast speaks for itself. Their bitterness ages them. Your healing beautifies you. You've reached a point where revenge would feel like regression. You've already surpassed the level where they tried to destroy you. They can't hurt what's healed, can't compete with what's chosen, and can't touch what's protected. Survival isn't just proof you made it. It's the loudest, most elegant form of revenge there is. Number 7, you're not cold. You're operating from cosmic distance. People love to label peace as coldness because they can't comprehend the kind of stillness that no longer bends to chaos. You're not detached because you don't care. You're detached because you finally understand what's worth caring about. It's not emotional shutdown. It's spiritual clarity. You've risen to a level where petty energy can't breathe. What used to wound you now barely makes contact, not because you've gone numb, but because you've outgrown the need to translate noise into meaning. The truth is, when you reach a certain level of consciousness, gossip, jealousy, and hate start sounding like bad reception, distorted, repetitive, irrelevant. You hear it faintly, but it no longer lands. You've ascended beyond the range of their frequency. They think you've gone distant, but really, you've gone higher. That's what cosmic distance feels like. You still see them, but from an altitude where their energy no longer interferes with your signal. You learned that emotional control doesn't mean lack of emotion. It means mastery of it. You've felt the pain, processed the betrayal, absorbed the lessons, and now you're simply not interested in repeating them. That peace they call cold is actually healed awareness. You're not disconnected from people. You're disconnected from dysfunction. You stopped taking everything personally because you finally understood not every attack is about you. Some people are just projecting the battles they're losing within themselves. Cosmic distance is the realm of the evolved. It's where you start responding to life, not reacting to people. You stopped attending every argument you were invited to. You stopped explaining truths that were never meant to be understood by those who prefer lies. That's why you seem mysterious now, You've become too quiet for chaos, too calm for confrontation, too stable for manipulation. They'll call it coldness because they can't recognize evolution when it no longer entertains their dysfunction. But you know what it really is, freedom. You're not heartless. You're just operating on divine altitude. You no longer speak the language of gossip and conflict because your soul has switched frequencies. What they hear as silence is actually your transformation humming on a higher wavelength. Number 8. They wanted you angry. You became unreachable. They were counting on your rage, depending on your reaction, praying for a scene. Because anger is predictable. It gives them a sense of control. When you explode, they can frame you. When you argue, they can twist your words. When you defend yourself, they can pretend you're guilty. But when you stay calm, when you meet their chaos with silence and composure, they have nothing left to grab onto. Your peace becomes their punishment. Your calm terrifies them because it exposes something they can't fake. Power. True power doesn't shout. It simply is. When they can't shake you, they start questioning their own relevance. You've taken away their favorite tool, your emotional response. They can't study you, can't provoke you, can't predict you. You've become unreadable, and for manipulators, that's the worst kind of loss. They feed on your attention, and when you no longer give it, they start starving. Anger can be controlled. People can spin it, use it, provoke it again later. But indifference, real indifference, is permanent exile. It tells them they don't matter in your world anymore. You didn't just stop reacting, you stopped recognizing them as factors in your emotional climate. That's why it terrifies them. They can't undo the peace you've built, and they can't compete with the self-mastery you've developed. You've reached a point where silence feels stronger than confrontation, not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you've already won the inner war. You no longer need to defend your name, your growth speaks louder. They expected you to fight for clarity, but you chose closure. They wanted you to yell, but you smiled. They wanted you to break, but you breathed. That's not weakness, that's arrival. The truth is, when you stop reacting, you become ungovernable. No one can weaponize your emotions if you've already mastered them. You don't need revenge when peace has already flipped the script. They wanted chaos. You offered stillness. They wanted a fight. You gave them distance. And that distance, that quiet, divine, unreachable calm, is where your true dominance lives. Number 9, you no longer dance for validation. You built your own stage. There was a time when you needed people to see your worth before you could believe in it. You worked for applause, chased acknowledgement, and tried to prove yourself to eyes that were never capable of seeing your depth. But evolution changes the performance. At some point, you realized the stage they gave you was too small for your truth. So you stopped performing and started creating. You stopped asking for a seat at their table and built an entire theater out of your solitude. You no longer crave applause because you've learned how hollow it sounds when it comes from the wrong crowd. The validation you once needed now feels like noise. You've become your own audience, the only one who truly understands the weight of what it took to stand here. You no longer wait for someone to tell you that you've made it, because you've seen how quickly praise turns into envy when growth continues past their comfort zone. You've learned that silence after your success isn't rejection, it's revelation. It shows who was clapping for your potential, not your progress. You've become your own orchestra now. You move at your own rhythm, create at your own pace, and celebrate without permission. The applause of others doesn't hit the same when your soul already sings louder than their approval. That's not pride, that's liberation. You stopped chasing attention because you realized attention is temporary, but alignment is eternal. Every time you choose peace over performance, you reclaim the energy that once kept you exhausted trying to prove you're enough. Now you don't need to announce your growth. It radiates. You walk differently because you no longer carry the weight of convincing anyone of your value. The people who get it, Get it. The rest can keep guessing. You've become untouchable not because you have more, but because you need less. That's what real confidence feels like. The kind that doesn't shout for notice, but commands it naturally. You stopped being a performer in someone else's show. You became the producer of your own destiny. And once you built your own stage, you realized the spotlight was never theirs to give. It was always yours to turn on. Number 10. Their words echo in a realm you've already abandoned. They're still trying to provoke the version of you that used to respond. The one that still cared, still defended, still explained. But that version doesn't live here anymore. You've evolved beyond the coordinates of their reach. They don't realize you've already upgraded systems while they're stuck arguing with your old software. That's why their attacks feel delayed, why their insults land flat. They're trying to fight a ghost you outgrew. It's not arrogance, it's ascension. You've done the inner work. You've faced yourself, healed the parts they once used against you, and turned your pain into power. They're still rehearsing the old story while you've moved on to new chapters. They keep calling out your name, but the frequency they're on doesn't connect to where you are now. You no longer live in the dimension where their opinions have authority. They're yelling into an empty room, mistaking the echo for conversation. The beauty of evolution is that you don't have to announce it. Your silence says it all. The things that once triggered you now amuse you. The comments that used to sting now sound recycled. You see their words for what they are, echoes of their own stagnation. They're not describing you. They're describing who you were before awareness arrived. And that's why you don't respond. You're not being passive. You're just unavailable. Growth creates distance, and that distance confuses people who expected you to stay predictable. They can't reach you because you no longer operate from the same emotional altitude. You've stopped playing small, stopped translating your spirit to fit their limits. Now they're swinging at shadows, trying to pull you back into a version of yourself that no longer exists. You can't be touched when they're still chasing your old frequency. Their judgment doesn't connect because your vibration has changed. You've moved from survival to sovereignty, from reaction to awareness. And once you evolve at that level, their words stop being weapons. They become echoes fading into irrelevance. You didn't run from them. You simply rose so high their reach became useless. Number 11. You stopped caring because you finally saw the script. Everything that used to upset you, the gossip, the backhanded comments, the subtle betrayals, suddenly looked familiar. It wasn't new pain. It was the same recycled drama wearing different faces. You realized there was nothing spontaneous about it. It was mechanical, predictable, and painfully unoriginal. Once you recognized the pattern, it lost its power. You weren't reacting to people anymore. You were observing programs. The same emotional traps, the same manipulation tactics, the same empty cycles meant to keep you performing. And the moment you saw it, you detached. That's the shift. When awareness kicks in, emotion checks out. You stopped taking it personally because you understood it was never about you. It was about control. The insults were just tools, the gossip a form of bait, the jealousy a symptom of unhealed envy looking for an outlet. You started noticing how they all operate the same way, provoke, observe, and feed off your reaction. Once you refused to play, the entire production started collapsing. You realized most people aren't even original in their malice. They're just repeating behaviors they saw work on someone else. It's all performance, all theater, and you're no longer interested in being part of the audience. You saw the script so clearly that it stopped entertaining you. That's when your care shut off, not from bitterness, but from clarity. Because how can you get angry at something that's been automated? You can't. You can only step back and let the mechanism run itself into exhaustion. Seeing the script also reveals how spiritually bankrupt manipulation really is. It's predictable because it's empty. It has no creativity, no depth, no truth. That's why it keeps looping, because it has nowhere else to evolve. Once your mind ascends beyond that level, you realize that reacting to it only keeps you tethered to a play that's already lost meaning. So you stopped caring, not as an act of defiance, but as a declaration of mastery. You walked off the stage mid-scene and left them performing for no one. They still try to provoke the old version of you, but you've retired from that storyline. You're no longer a character in their drama. You're the author who finally closed the script. Number 12. You became too expensive for their energy budget. There was a time when you were easily accessible, when you explained yourself too much, cared too quickly, and gave your energy freely to anyone who showed interest. You didn't realize how much of yourself you were spending on people who were only window shopping your spirit. But something shifted. You started valuing your peace like currency. And suddenly, not everyone could afford your presence. Your time became sacred. Your attention became rare. Your boundaries became non-negotiable. And that's when you noticed. The moment your self-respect increased, their enthusiasm decreased. People who were drawn to your old version, the one that overgave and over-explained, start to fade when they realize access now requires accountability. Your peace became premium, and their drama couldn't meet the cost. They call it distance, or say you've changed. But the truth is, you simply stopped offering discounts on your energy. You used to settle for emotional IOUs from people who never paid you back in honesty or respect. Now, you charge full price, not in money, but in effort, consistency, and truth. Your energy is no longer a public resource. You stopped letting people withdraw from you without deposits of loyalty or intention. You realize that peace is the highest form of wealth, and drama is debt disguised as excitement. The more you invested in your healing, the more you understood that not everyone can afford the maintenance cost of your growth. Some relationships expired not because of hate, but because they couldn't keep up with your new vibration. When your self-worth rises, so does your energy value. That's why you stopped explaining your boundaries. You simply enforced them. People who were comfortable draining you now find you difficult. That's fine. Growth always prices out the unaligned. You're not being selfish, you're protecting your spiritual economy. Now peace is your luxury brand. Access to you comes with standards, patience, respect, and truth. Anything less gets declined instantly. And that's how you know you've evolved. When chaos feels too expensive and peace feels like profit, you no longer chase what costs your sanity. You've become too valuable for cheap connections, and your silence is the new symbol of your wealth. Number 13. The real revenge is how peace ages you differently. Nothing exposes the difference between you and them like time. While bitterness eats away at their spirit, peace nourishes yours. You can see it in the way they move, tense, reactive, constantly scanning for validation or conflict. And then there's you, lighter, calmer, no longer flinching at the noise. That's what happens when you stop letting other people's poison dictate your peace. You glow differently because you chose not to drink from the same cup. Bitterness is corrosion in disguise. It doesn't show up all at once. It builds slowly, like rust on a soul. Every grudge, every act of revenge, every replay of what went wrong eats away at their inner structure. They think they're winning because they're still loud, still bitter, still fighting back. But peace works in silence. It refines you quietly. It gives you clarity, rest, and dignity. While they're aging from the inside out, you're renewing from the inside in. You can't fake that kind of difference. It radiates. Every time you refuse to react, you polish something within you. You strengthen emotional muscles that revenge could never build. Your self-control becomes beauty. Your forgiveness becomes freedom. Your detachment becomes wisdom. And all the while, they're still feeding the same flame that's burning them alive. The real revenge isn't in seeing them suffer. It's in realizing you never had to lower yourself to their level to win. You won by healing. You won by not needing the last word. You won by choosing peace even when you had every reason not to. The irony is the same people who tried to destroy your peace will one day envy it. They'll see how lightly you carry what once weighed so heavy. They'll see how youthful your spirit feels compared to their exhausted resentment. That's divine justice, slow, silent, and undeniable. Peace is the kind of revenge that doesn't announce itself. It simply shows up over time. In your smile, your glow, your stability, your laughter, you start aging like grace while they age like regret. There's no cruelty in it, only contrast. Because when you stay calm in a world fueled by bitterness, you don't just survive, you evolve beautifully. Number 14. You don't care because you finally remembered who you are. It wasn't some sudden transformation or spiritual awakening. It was a quiet remembering. You stopped needing proof, validation, or defense because something inside you clicked back into place. You remembered your essence, your power, your worth. And when that kind of awareness returns, gossip, rumors, and opinions lose all weight. They don't sting anymore because they no longer reach the part of you that once believed them. You didn't rise above anything, you simply came back to yourself. That's the secret most people don't understand. Confidence isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the self you buried under other people's projections. Every insult they threw at you was meant to make you forget. Every betrayal was designed to make you question your light. But somewhere along the line, you stopped searching for yourself in their reflections. You looked inward, and there you were, untouched, waiting. When you truly remember who you are, you become unbothered in a way that confuses people. They mistake it for arrogance because they can't comprehend self-certainty without ego. But you're not acting superior, you're simply no longer available for comparison. You understand that worth isn't a contest. You no longer take offense because offense requires insecurity, and that insecurity dissolved the moment you recognized your own value. The gossip became background noise not because it stopped, but because you stopped tuning in. You realized it's the soundtrack of small minds playing on repeat. It has no melody, no truth, no depth, just the sound of people trying to find relevance by dissecting what they can't understand. Meanwhile, you've moved on to frequencies they can't access. Remembering who you are changes everything. It brings peace where there used to be pain, silence where there used to be struggle. You no longer chase what was never meant for you, and you no longer explain what was never theirs to understand. That's not indifference, that's alignment. You've come home to yourself, and that's the loudest comeback of all. Because once you remember who you are, you don't need to prove it. Your existence does the talking, and your peace does the echoing. At some point, you stop explaining your evolution and simply start living it. You stop fighting small battles because you finally understand. Your silence isn't surrender, your detachment isn't weakness, and your peace isn't apathy. It's power, precision, and perspective. You've learned that not every insult deserves acknowledgement, not every rumor needs correction, and not every person is qualified to access your energy. You've reached a place where revenge feels irrelevant because peace already proved your resilience. The gossip, the jealousy, the mocking, they were all tests to reveal how unshakable you've become. You used to take things personally. Now you take them as lessons. You used to seek closure. Now you create it by walking away. That's real mastery, when you don't need the world to understand your silence to know that it's victory. Every step you've taken away from drama was a step closer to remembering your divine rhythm. You realized that calm is not the absence of chaos, but control within it. You no longer care because you finally see through the illusion. The noise was never about you. It was always a reflection of who they aren't. And while they rust in resentment, you rise in refinement. That's the kind of revenge only peace can deliver. So keep walking in quiet confidence. Keep building your stage, not explaining your spotlight. The chosen ones don't compete, they create. And the more you evolve, the fewer explanations you owe. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs that reminder today. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because we're just getting started on unveiling the mind and spirit of the chosen ones. Stay grounded, stay untouchable, and remember, your peace is your proof. Stay blessed always.